What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Replayer Podcast SideQuest episode to discuss The Last of Us Part 2. Joining me this week, joining you and me, Pagan. We, English, have
It's
Drew
funny,
Lewis.
like, I've been drinking, but you've not been drinking. Like, do you need a moment?
Start drinking.
Yes, I need more.
Now.
I need more.
Just pour plain vodka.
Joining us for this discussion is Drew Lewis,
Woo!
Wayne Talbot,
Woo!
and of course, Pagan.
Woo woo!
Good old Pagan.
I get double woos.
You're your
I
own
get
hype person.
I'm my own hype man.
You can tell you've been drinking, Pagan.
I had like a sip.
I know.
This is my first sip. It's going to
all
go
it takes.
really
It was a really good sip.
All it takes.
It's gonna go so well from here. I'm so excited. Go ahead.
Perfect. All right, just to get us kicked off, I just want to point out it has been 3 months since The Last of Us 2 has released. Feelings were hurt, blood was boiled, things got a little crazy, but it seems like people have calmed down. It's safe now. The dust has settled.
Mm-hmm.
And we're here to talk about it. And just to give you a little warning, there will be spoilers. And if you haven't played the game by now, I don't care.
Yeah. That's on you. If you're listening to this and I haven't played the game and you're like, I think I'll listen and there won't be any spoilers, you are wrong.
100%.
There's still that one person who's like on level, like still in Seattle. Like, I
Day
have
one.
to explore every inch of this place.
And find all those superhero cards.
And
If
they've
it was
decided
not-
to listen to this.
Yeah.
If it was not for this recording of the podcast, I would probably be that person.
Yeah.
I'd
Totally.
probably still be in Seattle.
On that note, fun fact, like we've been talking about doing this for how long now? And we're
Pretty
Pagan's
much a couple
just
after the game came out, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
say a
I did yeah, it came. When did it come out? 9th
June.
of June or July? Sorry. Yeah, we kind of like everybody else finished the game, and I was like, cool. I'm still in.
See you guys later.
Day one, and they were like, fuck you, Pagan, finish the game. So I did a month later, and now here we are.
Here we are.
2 months after that. Yeah, it's nice to. I think I also do think at the time, like you said, like people were fucking angry about this game for no reason, and there's just like a
Yeah.
whole bunch of stuff that came out when it was finished. Like people completed the
The
game and they
heat.
had a lot of opinions. Yeah, so I think now is a really good time to sort of go back and look through it because
Yeah.
there was a lot of opinions shared, and the dust has settled on the game now. People have calmed their tits, and like
That's
talk about it.
exactly what I
Actually
said
getting
too. People
down
have
with
calmed their tits. It's safe to
What?
talk about it now.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
we won't
but
get
listen,
struck.
though, like, I think those opinions are valid, a lot of them. I mean, some of them are just plain fucking mean and don't need to be whatever. Some people are just assholes. But I mean, critique is critique, and I think
Mhm.
the biggest game of the year deserves that critique, right? I don't
Oh,
think-
sure.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, a lot of people are, bitching about it or happy about it, and there's like two sides warring. Everybody's like, oh my god, this, that. But I think it's all part of how great and how awesome Naughty Dog was at being able to bring up something like this that
Yeah.
swells inside of people. I think that's insane. So I don't know. I think, again, I go back to, like, I think a lot of the critique is valid. I think some of the points that writers or reviewers were making and people who played the game, I think they should have those opinions, and I don't necessarily think they're wrong either, a lot of them. So
Mhm.
No,
so
of
it's
course.
interesting.
I
I
actually
think-
think that's a big part of it too. Like people don't
Yeah.
give reviewers the benefit of the doubt, and like it's subjective. It's always subjective. Everyone has their own opinion, and we need to be understanding of that and allow people to have their opinions.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting though, like when you were saying like a lot of the reviews came out and like their opinions were totally valid. I think it was really interesting that like just before it launched, they obviously had like previews or two certain reviewers, like I don't know, like Telegraph or whatever. I have a photo of like when they set it out. And everyone was voting it between 9.5 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. And then as soon as the game hit and like we had user reviews, that seemed crazy. A lot of people were like, oh, 10 out of 10, the game is fantastic. And then as soon as users were able to actually access the game once it launched, people were like, how are you rating this 10 out of 10? But that's really interesting because I think Wayne has a rating of 10 out of 10 for this game. Do you?
That's good. Let me start it off
It's
then
really good.
On that note, let me kick it right off with how I wanted to start this conversation with. I assume we've all played The Last of Us now Pagan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I have finished.
Pagan
yes.
has finished. And with that, I wanted to go around and get everyone's a score on the game if you have one. If you can give it a number, stars, what have you. And I wanted to throw it to Drew and bring it around to Wayne.
All right. I don't know. I haven't thought of it on a scale of, but I get it's up there. It's definitely high. I mean, it's definitely like upper echelon of video games. I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words, but I can't argue with how amazing the game is. Like, it's technically one of the most beautiful games I've played. It's almost flawless. It has very little, like, from what I could tell, glitches, just as a casual gamer. And I appreciate the team at Naughty Dog taking just a gigantic swing here. Like, they literally were like, we're going to swing for the fences, guys. Like, we're going all out here. And anytime anybody does something like that, they're going to try to kind of rustle feathers. They're doing things that are out of the field of what normal people expect. I'm down, and now whether or not they landed it like a 10 out of 10, I don't know. I don't think they quite did. I think technically it's a feat. I think story wise it's a little like kind of off its rockers at points. I do think it has brilliant moments, but I also think it kind of has some lazy plot moments as well as kind of like really arduous decisions and violence. It just feels a little bit ultra violent to a point where I know they're trying to make me uncomfortable, and anytime I know someone's trying to do something to me, it sort of breaks me out of that suspension of disbelief, right? Like, if I it's kind of like watching a Hallmark movie, or something. Like, I know they're trying to make me cry, you know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of like, that's why I don't cry, because I know they're trying to do the thing that makes me. So it's sort of like that. It's like, I know you're trying to make me uncomfortable, and it's kind of working, but I kind of shut it off because I don't want to feel that way, because I also know that you're doing that. It's a weird thing that happens maybe in just my brain because I'm weird and broken. But yeah, I don't, as far as a rating system, to sum it up, I don't really have one. It's definitely way up there for me. It's again a beautiful game. I really enjoyed playing it for the most part. I played through it twice. The first time I just experienced it like a normal game with cutscenes, all the cutscenes, and kind of taking my time to go through and experience the world and enjoy it. The second time was really more of like, I just want to get all these collectibles, and I didn't even watch like a majority of the cutscenes. I was like, skip. I was just trying to get to like, I want to upgrade all my weapons. I want to get all the cards. I want to get all the coins. And I want to like engage with, to me, the setups of the different sections, like combat sections, are just incredible. And what they did there, like when you first meet the Seraphites and stuff like that, is just so, you're like, oh my God, this part is so cool. And I just wanted to experience those moments again. And because the cutscenes to me felt, they were great, well acted. They just didn't, the game to me felt was more important for me to play than the story, I guess, at that point. But in the second.
So ultimately, like, you're saying like it is up there for like in terms of rating. So out of 10, like, would it be between say like 8 and 9, or would you give it a 10? I think you mentioned that you were like, I don't think they quite got 10, but
yeah, I don't think they quite got 10. I definitely give it like a 9. Okay. Like it's again, huge swing, and I love that they did.
You appreciate
that.
it.
I appreciate the shit out of that. Because anytime anybody, again, for the technical feat that they achieved here, and it's the acting is phenomenal. Everyone did a bang up job. I mean, it is great. Like the it's well written, like the dialogue's great. It feels just too visceral for me to enjoy. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so if I don't enjoy something, then I kind of have to like step back and be like, I don't know if I'd want to play this multiple times. Like I'll play Uncharted 10 times, like every year, once a year, and I'll play it multiple times a year just because I enjoy going back into that world, because it's light and fun. Where like this game, I feel like once I'm in there, I walk away and I'm like, and why am I depressed today? Oh, it's because I was playing Last of Us 2 and I murdered a fucking dog.
Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was gonna ask you though, did you play it again then?
Yeah, I played it twice.
Just for collectibles, like just to get trophies, or like because you enjoyed? Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was literally like I was like, the completionist in me was like, and well, I do, again, I wanted to play the gameplay again, like those moments in the game where like you first get to Seattle and that open world hits up, and you can like go into those mini encounters, and the first, I'm trying to think of I think it's day 2 with Ellie, where you first you first meet like the dogs, and they can like sniff you out, and you're like, and there's that multi-tier level where you have to like get to the point where I think what's his face saves you, and you get in the car. Jesse, thank you. That whole like run of events as gameplay is phenomenal. Like, just the way they set up that level, the level design, and the AI combat system is, you could play that a million times and never do it the same way twice, in my opinion. So kudos to that.
Yeah. Ultimately, so like pretty great game, but little disappointing.
Yeah. Okay. And again, I wouldn't even say I'm disappointed, because again, I think they did what they set out to do.
Okay,
so
fair.
I can't be disappointed in them for doing what it's just, at the end of the day, it's a video game, right? I have to that's the medium. So I either judge it as a something else. If I want to judge it as like, oh, this is a narrative critique on social behavior in like anger management. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass here. But like if I'm critiquing it as something else, then maybe I could come at it a different way. But as a video game, I'm not sure I would want to jump back into that world over and over and over again, which I think, as a video game, you kind of want to, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fair point. So almost like the solid, semi-solid 9 for Drew. What about Wayne? What's your rating on the 10 scale, if you have one?
Well, I'm straight in. Like, I mean, my rating would be 10 out of 10 for me, because, and I will happily tell you why.
Thank you.
So
yes, please.
It's not just 10 out of 10. Thank you. Good night. But it's 10 out of 10 for me.
Thank you for your input.
Yeah, that's it. I'm gonna let's know this. That's it.
Take care.
But
Bye.
it's for me, obviously this game was a long time coming following the first one, and the world that the first one built up, to get the chance to go back into that world and see where the story had gone, was a huge draw for not just me, obviously for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I am a dyed-in-the-wool horror fan. Like I love horror, like really do. And I get what Drew was saying about, it's not a world you want to revisit over and over again, because it is a harrowing world, and it's you got to give them again kudos for that, for realizing a world that is like, I think they also said to do that, and they did it, that it wasn't a case of, this is not a plug and play game. When you're in this, you're in it, and you're going to walk away. I remember talking about this game before the first one, and when I put the controller down and I got to go back to my real life, I had survivor's guilt, because I didn't have all that shit going on when I was walking around elsewhere. Like, it was like, this is harrowing, it's hard, but that talks to the quality of the acting, the writing, the building of the game, everything that went into it. So when the second one came along, and I saw the first trailer for the second one, they showed the gameplay, I think at E3 or whatever, a couple of years back, and you saw Ellie going around, and she was trying to get, for one point when it was in the car park
she was hiding under
in
the car,
Seraphite section. Yeah, that's right.
So the Seraphites, where you're in the car park and you're coming up and going around, that was that section. I saw that and I was like, all in.
Yeah, sign me up. Shut up and take my money.
Exactly. So
for sure.
And I remember when I was playing Last of Us 1, and you get to the section where Joel is injured and you're Ellie and you're having to hunt and go for supplies, and it gets to Nolan's storyline. You actually meet Nolan's character, and that part happens. As soon as that started, as soon as Joel was injured and it was Ellie's turn to do things, I was like, right, here's the sequel. This is what's going to happen in the sequel. You're going to be Ellie for the entire fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I'm all there for that, because she was such a good character, and Ashley Johnson was so good at playing her, that I had no problem with her being one of the main characters in a proposed sequel. Mm-hmm. So when I got the chance to actually play as Ellie, a much older Ellie, seeing how she had changed and grown and become the person she became, I thought this was phenomenal. Actually, to get to step into that character's shoes and move through her story. There was a natural progression of story that I was all in for. So as far as the storytelling was concerned, I was like, yep, this is exactly where I thought it was going to go. Now, it did throw me when it went to certain sections, and I get what Drew was saying about some of the violence being overwrought and it was there to kind of upset you. But a lot of the best horror, a lot of the best films that are thrillers or suspenseful, the games are the same. They do that. They make you uncomfortable because that's what their purpose is, to make you uncomfortable. And I think The Last of Us did that. But going in, that's kind of what I wanted from it. I don't mean to sound sadistic when I say that, but it's kind of what I expected and what I wanted from the game, because it's kind of like, yeah, that's what I paid my money for. This is the game I paid my money for, because I knew that that's where Naughty Dog, because you have to ramp it up for a sequel. You have to dial it up to 11 for a sequel, because that's what good sequels do. They take what they build on, they take what they made, and they build on it, and they take it to a next level. And not everyone agreed with the way where they took it, and some of the character decisions and some of the storylines. Anyone that went into that game thinking that Joel was going to survive at any point really was kidding themselves from day one.
Oh, sure.
You know, for anyone that had a problem with Joel's death and how they handled it and how it was projected, really you gotta read the writing on the wall. I think from that aspect of it, I think they handled that extremely well and set up the game to be what it became. I had no problem with the change in characters halfway through the two kind of storylines. I thought they meshed them together brilliantly. I thought they were done very well, and it was great to get that. It wasn't all black and white. There was gray elements all over this world. Sure. And it's just one person's horror story is another person's revenge story. And I think they handled the characters. They made us feel for characters that usually be like, I just want to brain you. But it's like, no, I'm starting to feel for these people. These are people that did something to a character that everyone loved, but you're kind of going, oh, fuck, I kind of feel sorry for this person now. It's like, that's good storytelling. That's good writing. That's good acting. And to play a game that had that built into it to the level that The Last of Us Part 2 did, it's unseen. I think it's the first one broke boundaries and laid out ground rules for gaming that we had never seen before. And I think the second one has done that as well, by not giving us something that we all expected. And I think that's what it deserves. For me, that's why it deserves a 10 out of 10, because it gave me what I expected, but then it just built on top of that. It was like, no, we're going to take you over here now, and you're going to come along with us for this story, and then we're going to take you back around to this part. And I thought it was so well done, and I was literally with white knuckles on the controller the entire time. I think I poured about 40 hours into the game.
Wow.
First time around, and I did start a second playthrough on the Game Plus mode, but then my copy of Ghost of Tsushima arrived, so I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm gonna put you over here for a second, and I'm gonna go to Japan." But it's like I am gonna go back now, and I am gonna start the first game again, and I'm gonna play through them as one big story.
Cool.
Because I think when people do that, when they revisit it in that kind of a way, where they play the first one and go straight into the second one, I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised themselves how much they'll enjoy it doing that. Because I think that's, for me, I think all good stories, when you do it that way, they reward you with putting the time in. And I think definitely The Last of Us 2 rewarded me with some amazing gameplay, amazing storytelling, amazing acting. I mean, if Ashley Johnson doesn't receive all of the awards for this game, I will be surprised. And Laura Bailey as well deserves.
I was going to say, I actually think Laura Bailey, in some places trumped Ashley, and not in a way that's like a performance thing. I actually think it was more of a writing thing. I just thought, I actually think Abby's character is written better than Ellie's character in this particular game. That might be a controversial opinion.
I agree that I actually prefer Abby as a character in this game.
That's because, I mean, they intentionally make you a villain twice. And they've done it in the first game. In the first game, you realize you're the villain. Like, you know, with Joel and everything, you have to go in the hospital and you have to shoot the doctor, and you can kind of see it that way. You can.
Well, you can, but you don't. It's gray, because you're
definitely
not a villain. You're just
an anti-hero.
You're a desperate person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair.
You're not necessarily he is a villain in that his last act is villainous, but it's also just selfish. So I think there's a difference between a true villain who just wants to see the world burn, and someone who's just like, I'm here to save myself. I live in a world where it's everyone's
everything for themselves.
Everyone for themselves.
Yeah,
So
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I don't mean it in that way. Like I don't
Yeah.
mean like you're like definitely out to destroy the world, Pinky. I definitely think like it is more like you're like Joel's a bad person. Like
He's an
Joel is
anti-hero, is what he is.
definitely is, because I feel like he definitely had some shit in his past as well that like he's just not proud of, and it is a desperate world, and that's just kind of how you have to survive. So he has done some bad shit, and I feel like in this game they sort of force you to do bad shit on both sides anyway. So that's interesting that they've correlated that from the first one.
Well, I mean, I think the end of the first game, it's for me anyway, when I played it, as definitely as a dad of a young girl, when you play that game, the very last act of Joel in the hospital, that's his redemption. That's not a bad act. That's not evil. That's his redemption. That's him getting to do something he didn't get a chance to do before, and it was taken from him. And that's him going, I have the chance again. And he would do that again and again and again. And I think you see that in part 2. You see his acceptance, because he knows that this was coming. He knew that his time was finite. He knew that one day there would be retribution for what he did. But he'd been living his entire life up to that point, waiting for retribution for a lot of things. Like even when Abby and her group arrive in Jackson and they do that to him, he's kind of going, well, who are you guys? It's kind of a case of, which one of you fuckers are the people that I messed up at some point?
Who's revenging me right now?
Yeah. Like, what revenge am I getting? What is the comeuppance here? What did I do to you that was wrong that is causing this? And then, like, when he eventually, like, realizes, when you realize who they are, it's like, well, that's not one bad thing. But I remember talking to Troy about Joel and about his story and the shit that he'd done in the darker times when we don't see that in the first game. And the stuff he had done to survive. And now he had this life where it was peaceful. He was able to stand on his porch and drink his coffee. But there was always something about Joel in the background that he knew the clock was ticking. And he felt, for me personally, when you see Joel die, there is the only thing that he cares about at that point is Ellie and her ability to carry on. And I think by the game's end then, it is her ability to carry on that keeps her going.
Yeah.
You know, that comes full circle at the end.
I think like it's very like it's on the head, like the nail on the head there with the way you said like the last act of Joel is like his redemption. And that's him like redeeming his character and being like, this is my chance to save her, and I'm gonna save her. And I feel like similarly that's Ellie's story in this game. I feel like she loses herself so much in anger and revenge until the very end of the game, when she just realizes that it's not going to change anything. Like, it's just not going to change anything. The same way Abby sort of realizes that after she kills Joel, and it doesn't stop her PTSD nightmares. She doesn't stop having dreams about waking up and finding her father dead. Like, it doesn't help you. There's no end to this. There's no resolution here. And I feel like that piece, like where Abby, where they're fighting in the water and then eventually Ellie just lets them go. I think that is Ellie's just like a little bit of a redeeming moment where like she's just like, she gives up and she realizes that there is a little bit of hope left in her for a human being. I feel like there's just like, oh, this was, I hated that scene. We can go into it later, but fuck me. Hated that.
So
my issue. Oh, sorry, Dan. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask Pagan like what ultimately her overall thinking of the game was.
My rating is about 8 out of 10. I docked it 2 points. One, because it felt longer than it probably could have been. And I feel like when I'm playing a game and I feel the length of time I'm playing it, makes me feel like I'm not enjoying it and just feels like a struggle. And sometimes when I put down the controller, I'm like, I really don't want to pick this up. Like, I'm just going to go through another bit of struggle and uncomfortable, like, settings and stuff and violence. And I'm like, oh, fuck's sake, I don't want to do this. So that's why I docked at that point. And then the other point I think is also similar to what Drew said earlier. I feel like there were some lazy plot points or just predictable story points that I'm like, like I kind of wish Abby's story. The only problem here is that some of the places in The Last of Us Part 1, you can actually sneak past everybody. But I kind of wish that like Abby's story was just like from some back end, like when they were hunters and he was ambushing people with Tommy. Like, I kind of wish that it was something that we hadn't seen before, but it made sense that they had like, you have to kill the doctor the same way you have to kill Marlene. Like, there's no choice, so they have to be connected in some way. But that's kind of why, like, I feel like the predictableness, I guess, of that, the predictability of her storyline, I was just like, it kind of like got me. I was like, okay, so she's clearly related to somebody in the hospital. When like her story started, I was like, yeah, definitely, because it seems like she's a Firefly, rather than somebody that they've just ambushed across the road or village to village or something. I don't know. So those are the 2 points that I docked it for: the feeling of length and the predictable plot point.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. There's some just interesting choices, like, and I guess I don't know why I want my characters to be smart, even if they may not make smart decisions all the time, but at least they're smart. At least they're smart enough to make the logical choice in illogical situations, I guess. And
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm making sense. Like, for example, like Abby obviously had an educated upbringing, right? Like her dad was a doctor. You could kind of see that even in the backstory. Like, she's smart. This is a smart kid. And the fact that when she sets out to find Joel, there is not one mention of, let's also find the girl with the cure. Like, that's not even on her radar. And to me, that is like I don't know. I just don't buy it. I don't buy that she would want to like lose her father's legacy of finding this cure and just boil down to this like hunt for Joel, because clearly Joel left with the girl who was the cure. Like, that's like, it's obvious, right? Like, I mean, everyone,
that was
I don't
his
know how you
mythos, the legend around Joel.
And I think that's sorry, because I actually didn't think, like, when this whole thing was and she killed Joel, I didn't think that Abby knew about Ellie. But then obviously later on in the story, you do realize she does know.
she
so
does
I
know.
totally agree. As soon as I knew that, I was like, well, then
Yeah, they show the backstory of her and her dad
Yeah.
talking like, "Oh, we got to cut it out of her," and then she's like, she walks into the room, she's missing. Like, it's not like, oh, this random guy just did a rampage through this hospital and murdered everybody for no reason.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, there's some logical things where I'm like, and then the fact that Ellie is sitting there screaming at this character and she doesn't put two and two together, and I'm kind of like, that's clearly the girl. Right, you know what I'm saying? That's Ellie, right? Abby should know. Even her boyfriend should know. You know what I'm saying? Like, put two and two together here. Like, be smart. I don't know. And there's some other situations too where, like, if anything, Joel should have taught Ellie is to close the loop, right? So Ellie should have known. This is why I have the hardest part in the end of the game, where Ellie has the opportunity to kill both Abby and
Lev.
Like, she has to. She should know this, or like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, Joel with Marlene, boom, like, you'll come after me. No second thoughts. Like,
okay, yeah, I would agree. But coming across Abby in the state that she was didn't seem right to kill her, because both of them are fucked up, right? Elliot has been impaled by the tree just beforehand when she got caught by the rattlesnakes. Is that what they were called?
Something like that.
Something like that. And then obviously Abby has been like outside on a cross, literally, basically, well, not a cross, a post, like out there hung to dry for months, pretty much is what they were insinuating. So I feel like if Abby had been in full form, Ellie would have like went full at Abby to kill her with intent and would not have succeeded in the state that she was in. But because they were both at this like really vulnerable state where they're just like, this is so pointless, I am done with this, I feel like that made sense that they stopped. And I'm kind of like, it's a weird thing, because at the end of the game, you see her leave the guitar and she kind of goes off in the distance, and you're kind of like, so did she just let it go? Or do you think like Dina and JJ are gone, she's got fucking nothing left, she's not going to go to Jackson because she can't face Tommy, so where is she gonna go? And I'm like, does she go back to Abby? Does she just be like, well, I should have killed her, okay, I'm gonna go back? Like, the whole story is open, and I feel like the sense of the game is like, no, she doesn't. She gets over it and she lets it go, and that's her redeeming moment, and she's a human and she's got to go find herself now, and she's 19 years old. But I think I know what you're talking about. Like, you close the loop, just kill them, you're dead, done, it's fine. But in the state that they were in, I don't think it was, I think the story was fine that she didn't.
Yeah, and again, Abby, letting her live twice, I think, is like, how many times are you going to make a mistake? You know, before it should bite you in the ass, right? You know, like for someone in this world to do that, to let someone live twice, I just don't, I don't buy it. Like knowing that her mistake in the first point by letting her live, and then seeing all her friends die. Even with Lev saying that, no, like I'm like, please, Lev, I've known you for a day and a half. Please, you know, like I'm serious. Like it's literally been like 3 days. So like I don't know. And again, I think that goes back to the timeline of the story. Like you're playing this game, and I go back to your point, Pagan, of like a game feels long. I think the difference when the first game, even though it's a shorter game by like half the time, like 15 hours versus like 35, but you play for, the characters play for like a year, like 4 seasons. Where this game, you're going through almost the same amount of brutalness in 3 days. And that, as a player, you're like, I have a hard time understanding, like, how could someone go through that much torture, pain, whatever is happening, battle, this whole thing in 3 days, and then take a power nap and then be like, let's do this all again.
Okay, let's go.
Right. You know, where like when Joel almost died, you know, you don't know how long Ellie took care of him in that house, right? That could have been like 2 months. Before David and his gang kind of shows up and appears. But so I guess it's again, I go back to this like suspension of disbelief. Like the game needs to be smart enough, and the writing needs to be smart enough so that like I can buy into these actions. And I feel like the game at moments got too honed in on what it wants to make you feel versus trying to make the smart storytelling decisions. Does that make sense? Like it got too focused in on like, I want the character to feel this, versus just writing the best story possible. And sometimes that's trimming it down.
The writing felt very narrow at a lot of points, and like kind of choking the focus, kind of along what you're saying there, Drew.
Yeah.
Dan, what's your rating out of 10?
I'm right with you, Pagan, and more like an 8 out of 10. Pretty much all the same reasons that you guys have said. Just I can go into more detail of like, you know, like Drew said with the writing, there's a couple of plot points that feel like it just kind of falls apart or just doesn't really hold on as far as the story and the pacing goes. To what Wayne was saying about horror, like I'm a big fan of horror games, and that was one of my biggest issues with this game, is it didn't feel quite like a horror game. And I mean, there's interpretations of horror, and then this game was leaning more into the humanity of it and what the horror that comes from human beings just becoming awful in these situations that the game puts you in. And my problem was, because I'm a massive fan of the first game, I thought the pacing in the first game was brilliant. There's a lot of like tension, breather, tension, breather, whereas the second game had long stretches of just quietness, or you're just walking, or you're listening to dialogue, especially those forced dialogue moments where you spend upwards of an hour between cutscenes and then the walking cutscenes, where you're playing, but you're more or less just listening to people talk to you. And those parts felt very elongated and dragged out. And that goes to Pagan's point. It felt too long. And otherwise, I thought the game was technically brilliant. I did experience some glitching here and there. There's a couple of times during cutscenes where I'd watch characters like pop in and out, and it was just like, whoa, what happened?
Really?
I was just actually playing my second playthrough, and I was on one of the first cutscenes with Dina and Ellie when they're at the first outpost on their patrol, and Ellie straight was just like blah, 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 and just like jumped around like she just went nuts. I was like, whoa. And then it went back, so it snapped back in place. So I have experienced quite a few glitches in the game too, but nothing like game breaking.
Yeah.
And to go back on the horror point, like that's why I love the first game. I love the scariness. I love the infected. I love that struggle with the infected, and that I need to put together tactics on how to. Okay, I gotta hoard my supplies. I've got to make Molotovs. I got to make first aid kits. I got to make nail bombs. I've got to have this for if in case I face this, and I have to have this in case I face that. And 20 hours into the game, and I felt like, why am I still collecting supplies? I haven't even fought anything, really. I fought a few humans, but every time I fight humans, I'm sneaking most of the time or just running away. Because if you don't run away, you die, essentially.
Yeah.
So...
Except on your second Except on the second playthrough when you have all the weapons and you can just wipe everyone out.
Oh yeah,
They spotted me. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'll just kill them.
And
it's
A couple of upgraded Molotovs, be like,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
bye, ready, take care.
and there's a few points in the storyline that I thought were brilliantly written, and like I thought it was intensely fascinating when I learned that not only was Lev a Seraphite that was trying to break away from the clan, the reason why, because he is more or less like a trans character.
He is a trans character, yeah.
And that to me was immensely deep in the story. And I thought that was very fascinating. I'm like, okay, this is getting interesting. But they only kind of like touch on the surface of that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, we talked about length of the game multiple times. So I wanted to say it took me 28 hours and 45 minutes for my first playthrough. Wayne, you said it was about 40 for you.
Yeah, I took my time. Like I went.
Yeah. And I thought I was taking my time too.
No, I took my time. I found a lot of the stuff first time round, and I just went through and I wanted to experience it. Because I think, and again, and maybe this is reflecting on my actual review of it as well and my high score of it, but if you think back when that game came out and what everything else was going on in the world at the time, even though this was quite a graphic kind of horror-esque escape, it was an escape. So I was happily riding around Seattle on a horse, going, look at the sky. But it was
it's lovely.
You know, but I spent a lot of time playing the first time round.
That's perfectly fine that you can like take those times to enjoy things and take it all in. But like for me, like playing it at a pretty steady pace, and I felt like Pagan, like into that point, I'm like, oh, like this is dragging. Like I don't know if I want to pick the controller back up at times, and I went through that a lot, especially in the first half of the game with Ellie, and it was less as bad when I got to Abby. So I will
interesting.
get on that in a minute. But Pagan, do you know how long it took you to beat the game?
I don't know exactly. No, I think it was around the 30-hour mark.
Okay.
It was definitely, I think it like between 29 and 31.
Because I think when we were like comparing notes, you were like roughly 2 hours over me.
Yeah, over you. So I think it probably reached over 30.
Okay. And then Drew, do you know how long it took you?
Yeah, my first playthrough was like a Wayne's. I think it was 37 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And that sounds like the average is about 35.
You just take your time.
Yeah, I will not leave an area until I literally like go in every door and
corner to corner. Yeah,
corner. Yeah, like I am like that kind of weirdo.
Yeah.
Because there's that anxiety of like, did I just miss like a weapon pickup that I'm gonna need? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just weird. In a survival game where you're like, there's something here I need. I know it, you know, and just kind of hone in on like I gotta find it.
See, this is funny. Like I was several hours behind Adam. I think I was like 5 or 6 hours behind him, because he had time off, I think, at work because of the like schools hadn't started. So he was like 5 or 6 hours behind me. So a lot of the times when I was like, oh, I really want to explore this area, he would actually be in the room with me and I'd be like, hey, so if I go over here, is there anything worthwhile in that building? And he's like, no, two clickers and like some band-aids. I'm like, nope. Okay, great. I don't need that building.
Not to mention the ring from Uncharted is in there too, though.
Yeah.
I actually got that and he didn't.
Yeah.
I picked it up and he's like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, did you not check all the drawers? And he's like, I did, but because of the mechanic where you actually have to like turn the camera to see if there's something in the drawer,
right?
He didn't know because it opened and nothing popped, and he's like, no, and it just left.
I can't tell you how many collectibles I missed on my first playthrough just because like the way you have to sometimes angle the camera to hit that little like icon appear, and you just like you skim the whole room, but like for some reason you just didn't hit that one angle where that coin or that card does, and I'm like, oh my god, I was all over this room the first playthrough, and you're just like, it just didn't ping it, you know. So
that might explain my 40 hours because I literally stood in most rooms and just
spun the camera around a couple of times.
I think there were times where I was like, I can't remember if I was playing as no, I think I was playing as Ellie, and there's 2 shamblers down the basement of a building. You have to pop down, and there's 2 of them down there.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, I don't even know where you are. I presume you're trying to find Tommy actually in the first kind of like part where you leave Dean at the theater.
I think it's like day 2, isn't it?
Yeah. And you're
2.
kind of in this kind of odd area where there's like a lot of buildings. It's like a main street. So when Adam was there, I was like, Anything worthwhile in here? No. Anything worthwhile in there? No. So I feel like that cut off quite a lot of time. Otherwise, it would have definitely been up near the 40-hour section. But because like Adam would be like, no, you don't need to go in there. There's clickers in there and there's nothing collectible. There's this in there and there is a collectible. I'm like, great. So I cheated. Essentially, I cheated.
I got a lot of enjoyment in just clearing rooms.
I did too, actually.
Yeah, like, I really wanted to clear all the rooms, and even if there wasn't anything in there.
Which brings me to a point that I wanted to make too. You mentioned the enjoyment that you got from exploring and like getting into Seattle, and you're like, oh wow, look at this big open space, and that was something that was kind of like left a bitter taste in my mouth almost, because when I first got to Seattle and you get into that open area, I'm like, wow, holy crap, this is impressive. And I thought, okay, Naughty Dog is doing something different. This is a big open world. I'm going to be spending all my time exploring, kind of like in Lost Legacy. And then immediately, that's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
You never get a level like that again. It's so upsetting.
It's literally like the developers were like, that's hard. We're never going to do that.
That took a lot of time. Do we have more time? No? Okay.
Here's my other thing. It's not the only thing. There's multiple times where you're introduced to mechanics in the game that you do once, maybe twice, and then never again. Yeah. Like the guitar.
Did you another? Oh, I see. Yeah,
the guitar is very
Did you not go on YouTube and get all the videos on how to play Nothing Else Matters?
I'm not playing guitar in The Last of Us. I want to go fight clickers and destroy bloaters.
See, this is why you just
so that's why that's
why.
All right, like seriously, like everyone was going on about.
I will say
character and trans characters. They just didn't enjoy it for what it really is. It's Guitar Simulator.
I will say that I've seen somebody did a rendition of Linkin Park's song on the guitar. And I was like, that's beautiful, perfect, fantastic.
Yeah.
Some dude did Freebird or something. There's some fucking guy. But this video is some dude who's like up there and he has the most complicated chord exchanges. And you're like, how is he like? You get to see this dude in his basement somewhere, just like rubbing the touchpad like over and over. You're just like, what?
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the underutilization of the touchpad. That PlayStation 4 has 2 games that like use the touchpad, and now we're like,
I'm like, other than Detroit and The Last of Us Part 2, I don't ever use the fucking touchpad.
Well, no other game really uses
it.
Why would you?
When it came in, like when they brought it in, I was like, but why?
But yet it's coming back for the PS5.
Why though?
Did everyone get their pre-order?
Sony. I think we don't know. We actually ordered it several weeks beforehand in.
You don't know?
GameStop. Yeah, we don't actually know because we bought it. We pre-ordered in store. And as far as we know, it'll be like a first come first serve basis with pre-orders. So we actually don't know. We could potentially get it in November or we could get it in January. GameStop themselves in Ireland just don't know. They're like, we don't know how many stock we're gonna get. Like, so it's up in the air at the moment. So I don't know.
I did manage to secure a pre-order just the other day, actually.
Oh wow!
I got mine on Friday. On Friday.
Did they release more games? Or more systems?
Yeah. Sony released. Sony tweeted last weekend saying, "Really sorry, we fucked that one up. There'll be more consoles next week."
Fair.
So they released them. Smith's Toy Stores in Ireland is where I got mine. And if you had registered interest for the console, they emailed everyone on Wednesday saying, "On Friday at lunchtime, we are releasing more consoles." Oh, nice. So I literally sat there and just refreshed my website over and over and over again. And I got one eventually, and I know one of the person that got one, but then 2 of my other buddies didn't get one.
Yeah,
it was similar to with the Xbox. I sort of secured an Xbox. I actually tried to get one on launch day, and I got approved for the Xbox All Access to do the monthly payments for it because I'm like, that's just a good deal, and like, why wouldn't I do that? And I got approved for it because it's actually like a credit thing through this bank that Xbox did the whole deal through. But because there was so much bogging down of the servers and all the websites were crashing, after I did the application, I couldn't approve and finish the purchase in the cart, and it just never went through. But luckily, just the other day, actually, GameStop emailed me saying, "We saw that you applied. We saw that you got approval. We're going to put you on a waiting list for when they come back in." I was like, "Oh, cool. Perfect. Okay, nice. Good."
That's nice.
So I've got both.
GameStop in America is very different to GameStop in Ireland. The company that run GameStop in Ireland used to run one game store, and then they got a name for themselves, and then they were like, GameStop offered them a franchise, and that was it. It's 2 brothers, and they are shysters, pretty much. So, you know.
I mean, a lot of people here would agree that GameStop here is a bunch of shysters too, but I'm not going to get into that. So we already started touching on pacing and story, and that was actually one of the questions that I wanted to get into with everybody was, how do you feel about the overall pacing of the game? Like I had noted that the first few levels do a really good job of establishing like tactics, the stealth mechanics, because you do end up using a lot of stealth in some of the levels, especially with Ellie and taking on the wolves and the seraphites. You kind of have to be a little bit more stealthy with Ellie than you do with Abby later in the game. And then to me, going back to the overall story building, the way they did the 3 days with Ellie and then the 3 days with Abby. So I wanted to just touch on that, and I want to throw it at Pagan first.
For me,
yeah.
So again, pacing just felt off for me sometimes. Like I would often be really invested in a story and then trigger a cutscene that would start with 6 months earlier or 3 years earlier or 7 years earlier, and I'm like, I felt like something was ripped away from me, and I was like, now you're making me pay extra for this piece of information that I'd already worked my ass off to get to. Do you know what I mean? Like you get into the fucking to the Marine Center in where they are, Florida. I don't know. There you go.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't know America.
America?
Florida.
Is there a place actually? I don't know. They get to the Marine thing, and like Abby gets to the fucking door and then opens it and triggers a cutscene to 6 months earlier or whatever. And I'm like, oh for God's sake, like I just got here. I just did all this shit. I lost Manny on the way. Like this is dog shit. I don't want to I just want to be here. So that was kind of annoying. Like I didn't like those bits of pacing where I was like, I've already worked so hard to get to this piece of story, and now you've chucked me back 6 months, and you're going to ask me to play another hour and a half or 2 hours of this 6 month story that I understand may or may not be relevant. So I'm like, okay, well, yeah, but so in that aspect, I didn't enjoy it. I did also feel like, I think I understand what Drew's saying. Like in the space of 3 days, it seems like so much. And then obviously after those 3 days, you have however many months or whatever go past where Ellie is with Dina and then leaves Dina and then goes to find Abby, etc. So I'm kind of like, so much is happening in this 3 days. I wish that they had extended it over a longer time frame, like over years. That would have seemed better for me. And in the ideal of playing two characters, playing as Abby was spoiled for me. And I feel like it's just because I didn't clear the game quick enough, which I think is a bit of a hazard. If you're going to play a highly anticipated game, you better clear that shit fast or stay off social media because you will get spoiled. And I had seen something or whatever where somebody's playing as Abby, and I was like, oh, I kind of wish I didn't know that. Like, I kind of wish I had just like ended up playing as her, and I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. So that was kind of annoying, and obviously the whole Joel thing was spoiled on me too. So, but pacing wise, it just felt long. It felt like you'd work to a point to get to a piece in the story, and then it was ripped away from you. So that was frustrating.
Yeah, I felt the same, and I had a question about some of the spoilers too, but we'll get to that, I think. So, how about Wayne? How'd you? I feel you appreciate the pacing in the story.
Yeah, I do understand the complaints about the pacing. I really do, and I was particularly surprised by the final act of the game and how long it took to get to that point. I thought that the fight in the basement with Abby, I was like, okay, and then we're going to get a prologue, and then it was like, no, okay, I'm going to California, right? That part surprised me. And I understand any grievance anyone would have going, it's fucking Lord of the Rings all over again. It's like 20 endings. Right. Like, I get it. I totally understand that. But I think I can be quite forgiving when it comes to these particular games because I'm invested so heavily in these characters and so in the story as much as I am. I'm not saying anyone else isn't, but I had no problem taking my time. I wanted to stay in this world as long as I could, seeing the story unfold. And I did take my time. And I went through the beats of the story, and I loved the set pieces. And I thought that the way the stories were interwoven over the 3 days, I actually thought that was a stroke of genius because it punches you in the face very fucking hard, which I think is the entire point of this game. This game is not about holding your hand through the universe that it's in. It's not about trying to bring you and tell you a nice story of redemption. This is about hardship from start to finish and how hard it is to live in this world and continue to live in this world. So as much as the pacing was off for some of it, which I agree it was, I was willing to forgive that because of the investment in the actual way they were telling the story and how I was enjoying going through it. And I actually loved, I take it, Pagan, I don't know if you've ever watched Lost.
I was going to say it's very Lost-esque.
Yeah, it was Damon Lindelof writing.
I fucking hate that show. Oh my God.
There you go. So
Perfect.
it was extremely, that's Lost storytelling. Having
I
a moment.
hate that.
Yeah, having
Those
a moment in a
cliffhangers.
story that just, it goes in one direction and then all of a sudden somebody walks through a door and you're 6 months in the past.
Yeah.
And you're finding out about their backstory. That's pure J.J. Abrams, Damon Lindelof writing. That's what that is. And that's what they've adapted for this particular game. And I think they did it partially in the first game, partially, not as much, but partially. And I think they just ran with it in this one because they had so much to tie up and link in. And I loved it. And I'm not the biggest fan of that type of writing, but I actually loved the way it was handled because I got to see elements of the story that as I was playing it, I was like, okay, I'm now in this timeline. I'm probably not going to find out what this, but as the game went along, I was like, oh no, we are going to go back. We are going to go see things. The one problem, and maybe I'm sidetracking, if I am, that's fine. The one problem with the story that I did have with how it was handled mainly was to do with the marketing that ended up with parts of the story being shown in some of the videos. And then when you got to that point in the game, it's like when they make trailers for films nowadays, and the trailers have parts in the trailers. The trick trailers that they have parts in the trailers that aren't in the films when you go see it. Right? The way the game was marketed and the way the game was played, shown to the public, and they were like, right, here's the trailer for The Last of Us. I actually got reminded because I was boning up on the thing, looking through some books that I have and looking through some story stuff for the games for tonight. And on my Facebook memories timeline, I got notified that 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, they released the story trailer for Last of Us. There's one particular scene in that trailer that happens that I was waiting for to kind of, I was in the game going, how are they going to do that now? Okay. And it got to the point in the game and I kind of went, okay.
Yeah.
You see, I knew that was coming. I knew that. So when they release a story trailer, right, and it's that moment where she turns around and, you know, she says, what the hell are you doing here? And it's Joel's face. I presume this is the one you're talking about.
The original trailer, had Joel.
Yeah, the original
trailer. It's not even that it's his face. It's the fan reaction to that trailer was, as soon as the hand goes across her mouth, she recognizes Joel from his touch.
Yeah.
From how he puts his hand around it. And he doesn't even say a word, and she realizes who it is in the trailer. That's what they're implying in the trailer.
Yeah.
And then they hear Joel's like, you don't think you're gonna let you go do it by yourself, do you? He does that. And you're kind of like, whoa. And then it's Joe. It's like, yes.
See, I would agree. I think you're right with the marketing in terms of like it tries to throw you off. It tries to be like, oh yeah, Joel's great, and then nah, he's dead.
That exact thing had me thinking for a while that Joel was actually still alive, because I thought that was going to happen still.
So funny, like, because I feel like as I was playing the game, after he died and after you're going out and you're trying to look for Tommy, and then Jesse comes into the story, but like as I'm going out and I was like, oh, that's what they did. And Adam, we had only had this conversation the other day. He was like, I've been waiting for that scene like forever, like, and they didn't include it in the game. And I was like, oh, it's there. It's just Jesse's face, not thing. And he's like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, they just marketed you because they didn't want you to know that
they want to throw people off.
And then Joel is dead. So I love that. I totally knew what they were going to do there.
Like, I knew Joel was going to die. I had no misconceptions about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
I knew before I'd even played the game, before I'd heard anything about the story, going into that, as I said earlier, from playing the first game, I was like, right, Joel's dead. Joel's death is going to be the MacGuffin for game 2. That's what's going to set her off on her mission of revenge. That's what we're going to see.
I was saying that on the proper podcast ages ago, like months before the game came out, and I could clip that in here of me saying like, oh, Joel's going to die for sure. And like Pagan and whoever else was on the show was like, you shut the hell up. I'm like,
we didn't want it to be
he's
true.
obviously going to die.
So I mean, as far as the and like I said, I did give it 10 out of 10, and I still stand by that because of my enjoyment of that world and that game and the story as I
and it's
played
perfectly
it.
fair to give a game a 10 out of 10, but still see faults in it.
Sure,
there's nothing wrong with that.
But I do agree that the end part of it with the pacing, you think, all right, you're on the farm. Let's get these little sheepies in here. Like, cool, lovely. It's now farming simulator, Guitar Simulator earlier on. Now it's farming simulator. Let's go with that. But I thought, okay, this is just going to have PTSD about Joe's death.
Yeah.
The Last of Us.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I like that. My overall enjoyment of it kind of was like, okay, I'll let those niggly bits about pacing sit to one side, because I think for the most of it, because every good story has the ebbs and flows. Like, there's no perfect story out there that's literally like straight through. I love every element of this. There are elements of every story that's going to have those dips. They have to, in order to make those highs so much higher. And I think that's what this game definitely achieved for me, because the highs were like, they're like the whole moment where you're in the subway and everything is just fucking red, and there's clickers and there's seraphites, and you're just like, like that whole sequence for me was pure horror. Like, I mean, I know it was painted red and it was as subtle as a fucking brick in the face, but that was good. That's what I was. I'm like, I'm here for this. Let's go.
I will say, like, when you're saying that, like, the highs are really high, as long as it felt for me, the trudge through all the shit that you have to go through to get to the story point that you were looking for, those story points were so well written that I forgot how long it took me to get there until I finished the game and was reflecting back. So, like, when I got to, like, a really great point, I was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then I forgot that it took me, like, 4 fucking hours to get there through 6 months of journey. So I feel like I see what you mean. Like, the highs are high in this game.
I think if Joel had turned back up, he would have been fucked up. His face would have been half caved in. You'd only have one knee, so he would be like, "I will let you go."
The moment she blew his leg off of the shotgun.
He was definitely. And just the imagery, like, actually showing you, like, his kneecap and everything, and everyone's oh, fuck his knee, like, oh god.
It was like the bit at the end of Braveheart when they do that one thing and you kind of go, oh, he's fucking dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
There's no coming back for that.
No coming back.
They're not saving him. No.
There's no tourniquet to help this. Like, fuck that.
No. Yeah. I hear you. I don't know. Yeah, I wish to go on your pacing. It's long, man. It's a lot. Like, I just feel like from a writing and storytelling perspective, like, you could tell the same story in half the time and have the same impact.
I'd agree.
In my opinion. And that's what the first game did. It told a similar story in half the time, and I think had a better impact. Like, that last moment in that game, you go, and I think, Pagan, you said it best, where the moment in Last of Us 2 at the end, you're like, what? Huh?
Yeah.
Or you're like, well, thank God. One or the other. The first game, when it ends, you're like, what? This is insane. Like, it's a different. There's a different sensation, and I think it's because the game is just too long, man. Totally. I don't have a problem with long games, but I have a problem with long games that put you through the ringer. Right. And I think that's the difference. And the levity or the light moments in the game didn't make the game lighter. It just made it longer. So, like, sure, is the Joel and Ellie going through the dinosaur museum amazing? It's incredible, right? Like, it's visually and it's like heartwarming and it's so cool.
I actually had a tear. So
that could have been a DLC or something to me.
Sure, but I mean, but you have like 5 of those. Then you have the one where I don't know, you know what I'm saying, or Abby's like looking for her dad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
find the zebra,
right. Like, I'm like, oh my god, like, let's go. Like, it's 3 days. Like, I've spent 3 days playing this game. Like, like, is this real time now? Are we playing real time? So I don't know.
Animal Crossing all of a sudden.
That's how I felt when you, like, have that moment where you're like, okay, we have to go from here to over there, and they point at a structure in the distance, and you're like, are we gonna walk every foot of that?
Yes. That happened a lot in this game, that I found, like, I appreciated that they did not do enough of that, or a lot of that in the first game. Like in the first game, they're like, there's the building that they had to go through with Tess, and they're like, there it is in the background, and it cuts, and you're there, and I'm like, brilliant! This is fantastic. We got through to this point, we saw it in the distance, and now we're there. Perfect. With this game, that's definitely not like that. You see it in the distance, and you're like, I have to walk that whole way.
Part of that, though, as well. Part of that as well is the technical limitations that they had making that game for the PS3. So I guarantee,
it so well.
Yeah, but I guarantee though it worked in its favor. But for this one, they were like, "Man, we've got a stronger console. Let's pump a bit more extra shit into this because this is the world people want, and they want to be these characters for a bit longer." So maybe and it's to their own detriment that they decided that, okay, well, we're going to actually make you walk to that building over there.
I think so. You know what would have been interesting, though, is going back to, Dan, your point about the first opening moments in Seattle where it feels like this cool open world. Like, I do wish the game was like that. Like, if I do have to get to point A to point B, let me make my path. Right now, if I want to go through this thing, which looks treacherous and full of clickers, or do I want to go this path that's full of seraphites, or do I want to like take a boat? I don't know. You know, let me choose, but it didn't do that. So it just felt, I think part of the length too was it was so on rails that you have to go through this thing, you know, this terrible path that you have to take, full of inside buildings with clickers and then seraphites, and then you just feel, and then once you do those things and she does the cutscene, you're like, oh, there it is, there's the Ferris wheel, and you're like, holy shit, that's forever away still, you know, like you're like, oh my god, like that's those, and I've never been like, well, that's a good point to put this game down, you know, like those are those moments actually when she's like, there's this, and I'm like, well, we're fucking far away. Like normally
I'm at that point where I'm falling asleep like right, okay, it's definitely time for bed.
I would be the same, Drew. Like I feel like you like some games, especially the first game, like you're enthralled and you just want to keep playing because you're like, I just need to know how this is going to end, and I just need to see these people through to the story. Whereas this story, like you said, like you've already gone through a heap of enemies, be it seraphites or clickers or shamblers or whatever it is. You've gone through a heap of it. You've gone through a lot of violent clips, probably dog deaths, and then you get to a point and they're like, oh look, there's that building in the distance that was going to take forever to reach. And you know that you're going to have to like get a boat and get there. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to put this down. And then it'd be really hard to pick it back up being like, I'm still on this trail to this Ferris wheel, or I'm still on this trail. You're like, I just can't.
See, I don't know. I don't understand. I get your point. I totally understand and get your point. But for me, it was like, I got to get in this boat and get all the way over here. This is going to be great.
See, I think the point.
I was like in the boat, like, but I like what Drew was saying as well, like there was on rails. I think that's the Naughty Dog curse though, because in a way, if it is a curse, but the Naughty Dog gameplay, similar to Uncharted, similar to the first game, you are slightly on rails for a lot of it. And I think this, because of the way this game was built, the way they put it together with the technology that they had, they wanted to do half sandbox and half that.
Yeah.
And I think when we get to The Last of Us 3, if it ever happens, when it's on the PS5 in about 2-3 years' time, we may get that sandbox world. It may be a case of we now have two protagonists that we can play, Abby and Ellie, who are on different sides of America, and we now have to pick our path across America to get to a plot point. Maybe that's their future. But for now, I think Naughty Dog were maybe handcuffed to a degree, making it like that. And that might have been to its own detriment, because they were freeing and also limited to what they could do within the technology. And maybe you're right. When he got to Seattle, they got to the first part of Seattle, they were like, wow, this is brilliant. It's kind of open. It's great. We can't do that for the whole game. Right. Lock it down.
It totally feels
one and done.
Yeah,
it totally feels, and like the rope dynamic, like you're kind of like, oh, great. And then it's like, whatever. Like it just doesn't feel useful. To your point, Dan, there's like some mechanics where you're like, oh, why does this exist?
Right.
Again, beautiful game. I wonder, part of me is like, would it have been better in a different, would I have enjoyed it in a different story
structure?
Like I don't know, you know, like all I can do is speculate. I'm not Neil Druckmann. He's the god in this world. He's gonna tell his story, and I respect that. But all I can do after playing it is be like, would this have been more interesting if it was like a cat and mouse chase? Like the fact that they're on these parallel paths, but they never like truly intersect. I don't know, like it just felt unsatisfying in that sense. You know, you're giving me so much, but then I feel like the resolve isn't quite there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think like in terms of like a different structure of this game, I think like when I cleared it and was having a good like think about it, I think myself I would have preferred opening on a story of Abby and her father.
There it is.
And building this relationship, but not knowing he's the doctor until like the end-ish of like this game. And then The Last of Us Part 3 would have been this story. I felt like we've missed a gap of this. And I understand what like Neil Druckmann was trying to do. And I believe like he's already said this about the game, that he intentionally wanted to make you feel like disgusted and betrayed and everything like that in this world right now, and then flip it on its head and get to play as this character that you've already been like, oh, fuck, I hate you. Whereas I was kind of like, I kind of wish it was the other way. I kind of wish you had developed a story with Abby that made you absolutely love Abby, and you didn't realize the connection until the last moment. Yes. And then you have to kill Joel, and like you put the stick in your hand basically, and even if you had to make the first strike, and because that conflict, I loved that. Like the part at the end where Ellie is going to kill Abby and Lev at the boat. I hated that scene, and I loved it at the same time because I didn't want to. I didn't strike you know, when it prompts you to press square or triangle or whatever. I didn't strike. I died so many times as Ellie because I was like, I just want the fight to be over, and I wonder if I don't respond, if it will just close this fight. And it didn't, because I was on the side of Abby. But I think structurally, Drew, I think I would have preferred the game that way. I think if we had started with Abby and then got to Ellie's story later.
That's actually one of the main points that I was going to make, and I was waiting for everyone else to see if anyone else would come around. No, it was perfect. It was perfect. I was glad that it got there on its own before I said anything. Like I mentioned in the beginning that I liked playing as Abby more than playing as Ellie, and you were like, oh, really? So this is kind of my point, that it ties into that storytelling and the pacing, that you have a interesting premise of you would have liked to see a story that tells the story of Abby leading up to the murder of Joel, whereas I think what the game could have done is do the same story, but give me Abby's 3 days first, then give me Ellie's 3 days. I kind of wish the game went the other way around, because as I played through Ellie's story, I wasn't behind her motivation, I wasn't behind her actions, and then when it switched to Abby, and I realized, okay, I'm going to find this person dead. I'm going to find this person dead. I'm going to find this person dead. You know they're all dead. You know what you're going to find. I kind of wish it was the other way around, where you started playing as Abby, not knowing they were dead. And you come across them like, oh, shit, somebody killed my best friend. Oh, shit, somebody killed my ex-lover. Somebody killed whatever, you know. And then you find out it was Ellie. And I don't know, for some reason to me, like I had more fun playing as Abby. I felt like Abby had more interactions with Infected. That's another thing for me, is I liked the fights with the Infected, and I felt like there wasn't enough of that in this game. I just wanted more Infected. I constantly wanted more Infected.
I'm the opposite. I like fighting like human enemies instead. Like I like the Sarah fights with the rattlesnakes or whatever. Like I really enjoyed that.
I will say, I think one of the best parts about fighting the humans that I thought was really smart on Naughty Dog's part is when you kill a random enemy character and you hear them shout out like, "Oh no, Bob!"
Yeah,
she got Bob.
The name.
Those were the best. And I
love that.
Do that
humanizes them.
I need to shout this out too. Oh yeah, Division does that too. That one of the first times I picked up on that, the name they said was Troy, and I laughed. Like, oh no, he got Troy.
Yeah, I heard that. I got that as well. Actually, I remember that. But I see. The thing is, I 100% get the point you're making about Abby's story, and maybe reversing it is an interesting way. But I think the way they did it plays into and makes people react the way Pagan reacted.
Yeah.
So at the start of the game,
and I get that
you're not meant to care about Abby at all.
Right.
You're meant to like, this bitch killed Joe.
We need to kill her.
Let's go.
Yeah.
But then the juxtaposition that it puts you in after seeing her story and finding out why she did what she did and why she went after Joel to get the revenge she wanted, and then seeing the situation she's in at the end of the game, it speaks to the writing, the acting, and everything else in the game that you were like, I don't want to do this. That means that they have achieved what they wanted to achieve with you. With like, as Drew had said, they were making you feel things.
Yeah.
They were making you, they were like saying, well, you're making me do this. You're making me feel this way about these characters. That is the purpose of these games. That's what they do. That is the gameplay that they have. It's not an FPS. It's not like something that you're just going to like drill a couple of hundred bullets into some zombies.
Right.
It's as much as it's about the clickers. It's like when you're watching The Walking Dead when it was good.
When it was about the zombies.
When it was about, but here's the thing: it's like it started off being about the zombies, but after about a season, it became less about the zombies.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There, and it's more about the story of the characters. And I loved the moments, like that bit in the hospital with the mutated fucking
The Rat King.
Oh, that thing was the best part of the game, in my opinion.
Unreal. One of my other favorite bits with the clickers and shamblers and whatever. The flashback in the hotel with Joel and Ellie when they're going through the hotel, and I don't know whatever way it was with the gameplay up to that point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the way I had played it, or else I just hadn't seen it yet. But I had yet to see one of those motherfuckers come through a wall.
Yes.
And I was in the corridor going, I'm okay. I'm just going to back up. I was like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not okay. That type of stuff. Like when it happened, you're like, yeah, this is great.
I mean, you got to give him props for character design. Character design and sound design in this film or in this game were just incredible.
So I don't know if you can see this with the background, but if you don't have this book, get this book.
The Art of the Last of Us 2.
The sound design, I think, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like the noises that
sound
the
design
runners
blew it out
make
of the
is-
water. Yeah,
especially if you're playing with like headphones on, it's incredible.
Yeah,
Agreed.
and
This
like
is-
the addition of the guys stuck to the wall is very
Yeah.
Dead Space like. You know what I mean? Like you think that they're dead.
It's
That
like
was
Alien.
fantastic. I
that shit.
lost my shit.
I hate
Let me-
when that
when
happened.
they come out of the wall like that. Oh my god.
Let me piggyback on
lost
that and
my
ask,
mind.
did the game scare you?
At moments,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The Shambler scared the shit out of me. The Rat King scared the crap out of me. And the guys on the walls, like when you were first introduced to that, I think in the hotel is where you're first introduced to that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, scared the life out of me. I'm raging and also glad I was not streaming at that time, like because I was properly like, what the fuck?
That's the kind of shit you want to be screaming.
I was
That's the
not
kind of shit you wanna
expecting
be
this.
screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was definitely scared, but I'm a baby when it comes to these games anyway. So it doesn't take much to scare
I know
me.
everyone knows I'm dead inside, so like it didn't scare me that much, and that was part of the struggle that I had with the game. It's funny though because there was a moment in the game where like I'm playing it and I'm like doing one of those bits where it's like, okay, I'm walking through this building, doing this, and like nothing's happening. I'm not fighting anybody. I'm not seeing anybody. There's just like the random chatter, and like I'm like, yeah, this game's not even scaring me. And then it was right then and there that one of those wall guys popped out and grabbed me, and I was like, Jesus. All right.
Totally, yeah. That was the best. Those were the jump scare of that was by far probably the best. Some of the best.
I think the lead up to the Rat King 2 is also my favorite. Like that suspense of the
suspense,
the thing that's in the wall that you hear, you leave, you come back, it's out now. You're like, fuck.
Fuck. Yeah.
What was that?
It's just that
Where did it
bloody
go?
hole and mess and flesh that's just left in place.
Yeah.
It's like literally Clive Barker walked in here, but I'm just going to put this here.
Yeah. That moment
to you.
made me think this
See you
is very Resident Evil-esque. Like, okay,
Yeah.
see what they're doing.
Yeah,
So
well, and those are like I think the two best clicker type horror moments are Abby's, like when you're going after you and Lev fall through the sky bridge and you have to make your way down that building.
Yes,
it's like super creepy and intense because you hear them and they're like everywhere, and you have to go across these like planks to like different areas and rooms, and there's all those also the like guys that come out of the wall, and then the Rat King was also Abby. Well, right. So yeah, I agree. I think like it's so weird. It's like they gave the best gameplay and the story moments to Abby, and
that's what I thought.
I honestly think it was favored to Abby. I think they were like, you're gonna hate her, but we are gonna do everything in our power to make you like
have
playing
fun
her
playing
and her.
The problem, right? Like
that is problem. It's not level. It's not balanced.
It's not well. And here's my point. It's like I don't care how much you make me like Abby. She killed Joel. As a, I'm gonna murder her.
Fuck her.
Doesn't matter. Like she could be a fucking saint. She could have been like, I'm over here taking care of orphans. I'd be like, I don't give a fuck. You killed Joel.
He killed her dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Drew is sticking to his guns.
Drew's like anti-Abby. He's like, fuck her. She killed Joel. I want her dead.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like, if you're telling a revenge story, and if you're bought in on this, you got to buy in. Like, as a character, I don't. Why the
That's the
wavering? The
problem. It's not
wavering.
a revenge story.
Oh, okay. Tell me, what is it then?
I think it is.
Well, it's not. I don't think it is. I think like it starts out as a revenge story and then it sort of comes into something else. It reaches a moment where it's no longer about revenge. Now it's just about
in the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, in the last 5 minutes of the game. But ultimately, if it was a revenge story, she would have killed her, right?
Well, that's my point.
Like it's not. I just feel like at
so
some
you're
point
you're saying I spent
stops.
40 hours playing a revenge story, and then the last 5 minutes isn't a revenge story.
Yeah,
that's kind of
essentially.
Like,
it turns out that it's actually not about revenge. It's about finding yourself and being okay with the shit that happens to you.
And then I'd have been like, well, at least they love each other. I don't know.
That's gonna be a weird ending.
Yeah.
It's just the scene on the beach in California. It's just like pink, rose colored, and it's just all just holding each other tight.
Different season.
That was the ending I was waiting for. Was just Ellie and Abby at the end just stop fighting and just start making out.
Totally.
There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's go to Catalina together. Okay. Cool.
The fucking serious winemakers in that place.
Yeah.
Right. But I do agree that it wasn't, even from the start for me, it was never really a story about revenge. Ellie's idea of what revenge was, but ultimately it was mirroring what Joel's story was. It started off as one thing.
But only Abby's story is mirroring what Joel and Ellie's was.
True.
Ellie's isn't. The initial kickoff of this story is she wants revenge. Technically, she's going after her excuse is I'm going after Tommy, but like we know, like she was going to go anyway.
Right.
She told Dina that I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. You can't stop me. Like, and Dina being pregnant, like, okay, like I'm pregnant. Let's do this. Like what? So
yeah.
I don't. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. You know, again, there's just moments where I'm like, what are we? What's the story we're trying to tell? You know, and I get it. There's gray areas, and that's great. But at the end of the day, when I'm watching Avengers, I want the Avengers to defeat Thanos and everyone, the fucking world to end, and the world to be okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm watching a horror movie and at the end Jason chops off the good guy's head and the movie ends, I'm like, well, that was fucking pointless. I just watched 2 hours of Jason smashing heads. Like, you kind of want the protagonist to win, and here no one wins. And how are you supposed to feel? So at least in the first game, Joel wins.
True.
Yeah.
He got the girl.
And you feel justified in his actions.
And you feel justified, right?
Yeah.
At the end of this game, no one wins. Everyone lost.
Very much so.
I think that's the point, though.
But where's the enjoyment in playing a story like that?
It's definitely, I don't think, an enjoyable game. I think what's interesting about this one is like somebody said on inverse.com, they did a review on it, and it was called the most emotionally corrosive video game ever. And I feel like that's so true, right? Because I feel like you're just it's actually a Fall Guys review. No, I just feel like it just eats at your soul, because you're like, oh, I just want this thing to happen so much, but it doesn't happen. But I also think, like, I don't think it's a revenge story. I think it was what Ellie is thinking, like, what would Joel do in this situation? Joel would get angry. Joel would go murder people. Joel would go after the thing, and like, that's not technically the case, so that might not be the truth. And I feel like a lot of the moments of Ellie moving up to that is Ellie trying to be Joel, using Joel's tactics, telling somebody to try, like she's tried it with Mel and Owen and fucking backfired. You know what I mean? So I feel like it was this weird convulsion of what she thought revenge was in her head, like of what Joel would do, and trying to like find herself in that. And I think at the end of it, I think she was just so exhausted by trying to do something that they're just lost all point anymore, and it doesn't bring Joel back. So I feel like that's why it doesn't feel like a revenge story for me. Like, I don't feel like the resolution was Abby's gonna die, this is gonna be great. For the whole story, though, like of Ellie and then going back to Abby and then going back to Ellie, I was like, please don't kill Abby. I really liked her. I understand what you're saying. Nobody wins in this, and I think that's the point. Abby succeeded in her revenge. She killed Joel, who killed her father, and yet nothing helped. Nothing was resolved. So it feels like it's setting the pace for Ellie as well. Like, clearly this isn't going to help anything. So why should there be a resolution of her killing Abby?
But I still don't understand why it's not a revenge story. It's a revenge story that doesn't culminate in revenge. But,
right.
but the narrative of the story is still about
revenge.
like both sides is about I have this need to avenge, and I guess that's my problem too. I don't understand this world necessarily. I thought I did, but then if this world has honor, you know what I'm saying, and honor is like I have to avenge my fallen my family or the person that I loved in a world where it doesn't seem like anyone has any honor. I don't, you know what I'm saying? And so the revenge part 2, I sort of am lost where, because Joel really never in the game 1, he never sought out for revenge really ever. Like that was never a motivation.
No.
So I don't know where she learned this tactic of revenge. I understand her battle tactics where she's like gonna like torture one guy, point to where you want me to go, and then prove it with, because Joel did that, right?
Yeah.
So like I understand her tactics that she learned, and that's cool. I just I want smart storytelling, and I just don't think it landed for me, right? Again, I appreciate the big swing that they took, and it's so cool. I'm not sure. I felt all the motivations were there, and I want the characters I play to make the decisions that I would make in a way. You know what I'm saying? Because otherwise I can't put myself in their shoes. So if I'm playing somebody and they do something and I'm like, why the fuck would you do that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of like, well, then I get lost. I lose it a little bit.
Like, you think they should have gone multiple choice with it, like giving you the option to go down a certain route, like say
Detroit.
Yeah, like you know, choose option A. You make the logical choice, or go with emotions. Like, would that have made it a better, like to have? But that would have been a much more.
I think it's more like Drew already talked about, like his love for Uncharted and how Uncharted is infinitely replayable. And I find myself every time I play Uncharted, I'm like, every time Nathan says something or makes a witty comment, I'm like, I was thinking the same thing. You know, like you're just kind of right there in his mentality throughout the majority of those games.
Like one of the bigger plot points that I just kind of were like that just didn't make sense to me was that like Dina and Ellie like fall in love, and then Dina's all for this fucking ride or whatever. Then she kind of gets sick and you discover she's pregnant. Firstly, that scene is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, because for the whole time I was like, oh my God, she's infected. Oh my God, she's infected. Yeah. And she's like trying to say something that's wrong with her. And she comes out with, I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, thank God she's not infected. Jesus, I would have lost my mind. But my whole kind of like crux on that point was, your girlfriend has just told you she's pregnant. She's sick and she's vulnerable. Why don't you take her fucking home? Like, I was just kind of like, all of this, like, you're just putting all of this to be like, she's gonna be grand in the theater that's abandoned right across the road from the fucking infested train station they just come out of, like literally across the way. I was like, that doesn't seem the most safest point to be going, if I'm honest.
I think it speaks to the element of the way that world works, and the way Ellie works within that world, and all the other characters from Jackson work. So I think from the point of view of Abby's character, big city, large military operation, this is how they run things. They have a giant football stadium, and it looks like it's crisis center that's been converted into a community.
Yeah.
You have Ellie, who was in a community in Jackson, in the middle of nowhere, so to say. It's surrounded by forest. They have a setup. And I think this speaks to the way their game, what play was as well, where Abby had more clickers than Ellie did. Ellie was living in a world where they were continuing and surviving, and the clickers were just a background noise that they had to control every now and again. Whereas Abby was in a situation where they were living in this large metropolitan area that was infested. And it spoke to her environment that this was her environment, whereas Ellie's environment was a more controlled environment as far as they were in control. They were able to live the life they wanted in the community that they had, because they had gotten through so much shit together and got to a point where their community had control. Ellie lost that control because it was taken from her by Abby. And then when Abby's turn came around, she was in the environment that she was in, which was more akin to the first game than Ellie's current situation. Even though Ellie is now in that environment as well, she has learned to survive in a certain way that she doesn't have to go that route. Her to me, in her environment, in Ellie's type of character, she is the rogue and Abby is the barbarian. Abby goes full on in, and Ellie always finds a way to go around those things. And if she has to fight, she'll fight. But it speaks to why the gameplay was different and why you got different gameplay scenarios and why Ellie had to face off against more humans. Because right now in Ellie's world, the humans were the evil part of it, not the clickers.
Not the clickers.
Not the shamblers. It was all about the fact that she had to fight the inhumanity of man type of situation.
Yeah.
And then Abby, the reason Abby had to try and survive is from the get-go, from the very, very first time you see Abby, she's running from clickers. Whereas Ellie is all about taking out the people that have wronged her. Yeah. So that, to me, in my mind, that's why there was a lack of clicker activity with Ellie and more on the Abby side of things.
There's a stark contrast.
Purely stark contrast, because Ellie's path broader down that thing. So
I was gonna say, because even my early thoughts of the game when I first started playing it, I was like, okay, Ellie's story is one game and Abby's story is another game. When I was doing Ellie's play, I felt very much like I was almost in like a Metal Gear Solid game, where it's like, okay, I got to be stealthy, I got to be hiding in the tall grass, I got to be sneaking around, setting traps, and it was a very specific game mechanic that I was following. And even when you go back to Ellie, I had gotten used to playing as Abby and just kind of did it a little bit more guns a-blazing and just run and gun, and it like changed my tactic altogether. And I was like, this is way more fun just throwing bombs and blowing people up. And shout out to all those amazing visual effects and sound effects when you happen to shoot somebody and like their arm blows off or their leg blows off and you get those
what the fuck?
ridiculously long screams.
The kill animations were great as well. The extended kill animations were unreal. All the melee attacks.
You get one of those guys who's just like, like it just goes on
forever.
Yeah, the scream, or like when you're strangling somebody and the faces they're making.
The faces. I got so many screenshots of Ellie just like. It was so good.
I mean, is that a good? I don't. Part of
is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I don't know.
I don't know, right? Like, I think that's my point. Like, it made the game, like knowing the game, like every time you kill somebody, like that was Bob to your point, and like hearing the blood, like,
the humanity of it,
like the splurting and the neck crunch,
the
like,
spraying.
You're sitting, like you're playing this game and you're like, oh my god, like. And to do that over and over and for 30 hours, like you get to a point where like, please be over, like you're like,
I don't want to kill anymore.
Yeah.
I think this has proven one thing. I'm probably a very sadistic game player because I loved every second of that. And
it's funny because I play so many other games similar to that where I'm like, yay, never let the killing stop, woohoo! But in The Last of Us, I'm like, I don't want to keep bludgeoning this person in the face until their skull explodes and bits go flying on my face.
Yeah.
Dude. I don't know. I just thought the way it was done, the way like I said, those melee kill animations, so the combos you could do with the fluidity of the actions in this game were so much of a build up, like based on what the first one was great, and the combat of the first one was great. But now that you're running towards somebody, you get the pipe out, you fuck a petrol bomb at them, you start beating their skulls in, taking their legs out, pushing them through a window, like then you take your gun out and shoot this fucker over here. It was just literally one big motion, and all those videos that I saw online of people doing these chained attacks on large groups, and you're kind of going.
Totally. No, the game.
Or just the moments where they they lull you into a false sense of security by going over to like the desk, like you're trying to do like the upgrade desk or whatever, and you're in the hotel and you turn around and the WLF is like already on you. As soon as you fucking activate the desk, someone is there. Or in like that area where you're kind of you're in some sort of mechanics warehouse or workshop or whatever, and you're like, oh, look, a desk, and you go there and you hear them already coming. I love those bits of the game, but the gruesome violence, the blood splurging everywhere. I think I agree with what you're saying. Like 30 hours of that, you're like, please God, make it stop. Just stop killing everybody. And the beauty is like you can stealth most of those areas, but gee God, does it take some time? And I'm like, nah, I don't have the time. Just fuck a bottle, then a Molotov. I'm good.
I started to get quite creative with my. I used a lot of the kind of trip bombs and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I would stealth. I was maybe it is. Maybe I'm just a sadistic motherfucker when it comes to this game. I would stealth and scope out where everyone was, and then plan a kind of an attack.
I did that in the end,
where I plant bombs in certain sections.
Segment with Ellie, and I got to the point where like I got around to the area that had like the 2 clickers in the swimming pool, and before I got there, I had just planted random trip mines. and then I'm like, I unhook the clickers, and then I hear boom, ah, and I was like, oh, somebody hit one of my trip mines.
Nice.
You ever go back and look at the destruction?
Yeah, I went back and picked up any of the trip mines I
That's
missed.
a good idea.
Oh my god, the level of detail they put into the destruction of somebody hitting one of those mines was like.
Yeah, you watch people like splatter
I have
against
not
the
seen
wall if you actually sit there and watch
I-
it happen.
I actually had a great kill, and I think I might have accidentally deleted it off my hard drive because I ran out of space. But I was in a section. I just come out of a set of shops with Ellie, and I could tell there was like a garage, and they were on the far side of the garage, and I knew they were coming this way. So I went up and put a trip mine in the doorway, and the interior was in shadow, and the light of the exterior was there, and I could see it. And I was through under the door and up against the wall, and I could see in, and I just saw the shadow, and then he hit the mine, and both of his legs went and spun through the air off into the distance, and he's like, ah! But it just, just the moment of his legs just going.
Oh, amazing!
You're just kind of going, how did they just because it's randomly generated, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's not, infinite, but it just looked because it was all in silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like you'd slow that down and put some opus over it and be like, oh. Yeah. So yeah, I've watched a lot of horror films. What can I say?
Yeah.
You like horror.
I like horror. I like horror.
I actually just have a bonus question.
Okay.
If you could change one thing about the game, what would it be? I'll throw it to you, Dan.
I think it goes on to like wishing that there was more options when it comes to the getting through certain scenarios, like not having to kill people and being able to actually stealth through some of them. Like there's a few times in the game where it's like you're just running from people, and it's really hard to not get spotted, especially because of the dogs. And like I did my damnedest to not kill a single dog in that game, except for the one you have to. And that pissed me off that I had to kill that dog. Especially because I was trying to do a no dog kill playthrough. And then like now on my second playthrough, I'm just like, whatever. And I'm just like blowing them up left and right. But I'm like, I just want to try and not kill a dog if I can.
It didn't bother me, the whole dog thing. Didn't bother me at all. I don't know why. Like, obviously I love dogs in real life. Would never hurt real dogs, but it didn't bother me at all in the game. I was just like, it's just another version of enemy that I have to conquer.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Metal Gear had dogs. I killed them.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True. I mean, I've killed dogs in games.
They weren't even enemies. They were just dogs.
That goes back to like
dogs.
playing the original Medal of Honor, and you got German Shepherds coming at you, and you have to shoot them, or else they kill you. You know?
Yeah.
Again, I think it just comes down to like Metal Gear dogs look like pixels, and like
it's a realism of it.
Well, and the fact that they go make a point of like watching you like play catch with one.
Yeah.
And, like
they make you interact with them and become close with them. And like that's when I got really mad because you kill that dog before you interact with it.
You know it's
and then you go and you play with the dog as Abby, and I'm like, man, fuck you, Neil Druckmann.
Right, that's my point. It's like,
look, he gave us the hint of it. Yeah, he his card in it. He's a villain. He's a super villain, and his card is
Dr. Druckmann.
Yeah. So he tells you, look, I'm the bad guy.
Yep.
I mean, okay, you're the bad guy.
I will say though, in order to get my no dog kill playthrough, I actually got through an area purely because a dog glitched on me. Because there was one of those segments where there's like 2 or 3 of them patrolling with a bunch of the wolves. One of the dogs that I was trying to not get caught by and not kill actually glitched out on top of the back of like a truck or a trailer and got stuck there. And it would see me and it would bark and it would like alert, but it wouldn't alert the guys around him. Oh, really? And I was just like looking at the dog like, you just stay there.
Good boy.
You got this, buddy. Yeah, good boy. What about you guys? If there's anything that you'd change?
I would have liked a bigger section at the start where you play as Joel.
Yeah,
like more gameplay as Joel with more of his story involved. Like I know we got a lot of him in flashback, but I just think the character deserved more gameplay time.
Yeah.
Outside of what we got. Like we got the print at the start where you're literally, which was beautiful, where you ride up I think I've taken so many screenshots of that moment where you ride up on the horse and you just see the sun hit the top of the hill. Yeah. Like I've got about 3 or 4 different versions of that saved as screenshots. But I think Joel deserved he got a good send off to it as far as a character arc is concerned, but I think he deserved more as a character because he was such an impactful, popular culture character for as far as video games are concerned.
Yeah.
And I think as a character himself, I think he deserved a better kind of send off as far as the fans are concerned.
Yeah.
Because I can understand why people are angry about it. I can totally understand why, because he's he's that character. Anyone that played that first game, that character's ingrained in everyone. So.
Can I ask for the same thing for Oberon from Game of Thrones? I thought he went out horribly.
Yeah, I would agree. Actually,
I want a better send off for him.
I want a better send off for Oberon.
Yeah. I want a better send off for that series altogether.
Yeah, actually, can we just redo season 8? Thank you. Thank you so
wait
much.
for the book. The book will give you a better ending. So.
Yeah, true.
If he ever writes it, I think he's like, I'm fucking done.
Yeah.
He'll Robert Jordan. He'll get his kids to write it or something. Does he have kids?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Someone will write it.
Someone will.
Have you seen that guy? True.
Hey, somebody loved Hitler. You know? Somebody loved Hitler. You know
We'll cut it. We'll cut it. Don't worry.
True.
We'll cut it.
No, I met him in an elevator. He's a really nice guy.
He was just in the elevator looking for hot dates. Hi.
He was. Yeah. Ding. Hey.
Hey.
Like bearded guys.
That never take their head off.
Yeah, as far as anything I change, it's tough, right? Like the game is what it is. I kudos to everyone who worked on it. I don't want to take away from that achievement because I do think the game is pretty amazing. And it's a feat on its own. Again, I think length. I think length. It would be the only thing I would kind of cut it down. I would make scenes and character moments that I feel like they work really hard to make sure you understand what those character moments over and over and over again, where I think I got it already. Right.
Right.
I think the inability to whittle something down into a more concise story. I think Neil Druckmann needs an editor. That's all I really, I mean, at the end of the day, I think someone needs to be able to come in and tell God, like, hey, you don't need 15 days. You only need 7 days to build this world.
Right. Fair.
Because a lot of the big geniuses need that. They don't have it. Somebody's afraid to tell them. You know, it happened with George Lucas. It happened with Druckmann. If somebody's somebody's too afraid to go. Actually,
you know what would make this better? Not having this.
What if? Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard the phrase "less is more"?
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be my only advice. And again, it's his prerogative. He is God of this world, and let him do what he's going to do. And I respect that, and I respect his ability to take big swings and have people that'll execute those. I mean, that's amazing. And what his team did is truly a feat, and it'll win every award, and it deserves it. So yeah.
That's awesome. I think I would be the same. I'd be like an amalgamation of like your answer and Wayne's answer, because I feel like I definitely kind of like felt a bit jilted with Joel. Like you get so little of him in gameplay and you're like, oh man. And Jackson's pretty cool. Like this whole area, this whole like environment, everything's so cool. You're kind of like, I kind of wish there was a little bit more time exploring this world. And just length. I think like definitely could have been a more concise story. Like the continuous back and forth was unnecessary at points. You're just kind of like, no, I get that Owen and Ellie, Abby had a past. Like, I actually get that. You don't need to throw that in my face. You don't need to hop back in time. Like, I get it. Yeah. I think the stuff with her dad was beautiful. The whole Mel and Owen thing, I was just kind of like, I got it. I got it in like the first bit where you start playing as Abby and you open up in the WLF and like it's this whole like, oh, she's pregnant. Oh, it's my ex-boyfriend.
Right. Done.
That's all you did. Yeah. I didn't need that whole 6-month story. I didn't need that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like story's probably my main one, but I think the lack of Joel interaction and stuff like that and playability as his character, especially because like coming off of the first one, you're kind of like, oh man. Like you only get that small bit in the beginning and you're like, I want a little bit more than this. Like this just a small bit. It's the only part I would lengthen in this game. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us tonight.
Perfect. Fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
This has been a TRP SideQuest for The Last of Us 2. Thank you all for watching, and go watch Retro Replay, and I'll see you next time.